Hey everyone, welcome back. In this video, we're going to learn about how to finalize your CLO files, how to make them beautiful, how to export them, how to get to some lifelike renderings, how to work on colorways, graphics, and a little bit of grading and modular configuring. So to start off, we're just going to find a file. I'm going to go into my CLOset Connect. I have searching here for a jacket that is free. I found this denim jacket that I'm going to use. It's a little bit down the list when you look, but you can open up any file you would like. This one is called MV2 Overfit Denim Jumper. It is from the Connect official store. So it's made by CLO. We can use it for our testing purposes. And the goal with this is to get it looking as lifelike as possible and to get some really beautiful renders. So to start off, let's just make sure we have an avatar in here. So I hit simulate, it will work. We do. Some of these files come with these yellowed out pieces. In order to turn off the yellow, basically it has bonding turned on in order to keep these pieces stiff. I'm actually going to turn that off just so that that isn't in the way when we're looking. I'm also going to go ahead and turn off a few things so we can really see what we're doing. Turning off internal lines and baselines. So now we're just looking at the plain fabric. I'm also going to flip this normal so that we see the right texture on top of the fabric. If we were actually constructing this, I would make this a double layer collar. We're not right. So in order to stop seeing the underside of this fabric, I'm just going to go to thick textured surface so that you see the same fabric on both the inside and the outside. So this isn't like a technically finished garment, but just for visual purposes, that's what we're doing. All right. So first things first, we need to work on this texture, the texture of the garment. Right now we just have the basic like CLO fabric in our window in our object browser. So let's look for a better fabric for us to work with. This looks like a pretty heavy cotton canvas to me. I'm going to look for canvas and use this heavy cotton canvas just as our starting point. Now, if you apply this to all the pieces, here we go, and simulate, it will act a little bit differently than it did in the other fabric. This is currently at a 20 millimeter particle distance. We are going to be turning that down, but while we're making edits, we're leaving it like that for right now. All right. So if we want to make this look a little bit more realistic, what we need to do is add in some defects. So what we're going to do is we're going to go into our normal map down here. We can recolor this, however, if you want it to be more of like a Carhartt duck canvas kind of thing, you can go in and find the right color that you want. Maybe we'll go ahead and change that later. But right now we'll leave it as white so we can really see what we're doing. In the normal map, you're going to go to this three ... button. You're going to open texture editor. And here, the nice thing is that you can just do some of this manipulation in the window itself. And what we're doing is just editing the normal map. So like how it visually has highs and lows. And we're just going to add in another texture on top of this. So I've downloaded a couple of textures just from online. Where are they? I've got these two here. This one looks a little bit more like a canvas texture. So I'm going to go ahead and open this. As you can see, this is not ideal yet. So we're going to zoom out. So these are really big texture pieces. In this window, I'm going to turn this to a normal map. So it is layered on top of the texture that's already there. It's pretty heavy and you can see this repeat quite easily. So I'm just going to do a couple of things. I'm going to make this a little bit bigger and I'm going to desaturate it so there's no other color that's changed in there. And you can turn down the opacity. So let me try turning it down to like 50, a little bit better. It's not great yet. You just have to make the choice of making it really big or really small. You can turn down the shadow intensity to make it just really minimal, but it will still look like there's some texture in there. There are a couple other things you can do in here, but for right now, I'm just going to hit apply and close. We can always go in and change it later if we want to. But even already, you can start seeing that it looks like there's some additional like fabric properties going on in this garment. From here, what we're going to be doing is adding puckering and top stitching, which are two of the biggest things to make this look like a real garment. So we're going to start, I usually work top down from the shoulders and kind of out. We're going to be applying puckering anywhere that you would apply your top stitch. So, on a shoulder seam, your back is going over your front and top stitching would be on the back shoulder. So let's start there. We're going to go into our puckering tool and I'm going to do some free puckering and we're going to go ahead and add. And you'll be able to see this pop up as we're going around the garment. And I'm just going around the armhole And you can definitely see that visual of how that is changing. Like this is a classic seam line with no puckering. This is puckering. It definitely makes a difference. What we can do though is go into our default puckering. Right now our material is set to cotton, which could be for very lightweight cotton. So it might be interesting to even change it to a denim pucker, which makes it a bit more intense. And I actually like that. So we're gonna keep that. But basically anywhere you would have a top stitch seam or anywhere you want that visual, we're gonna add in this puckering. I usually only add it on one side of a line. You don't really need it on both because then that makes it look a little bit flat. So I'm just making some design choices of, I think that this top seam would lap over the back seam, or this front piece would lap over the back piece. So I'm putting the puckering on the one that's lapping over. Same thing here. Even with the visual of how it's laid out in the program, you can kind of see how it would be constructed. These are symmetric patterns, thankfully, so it's applying to both sides. And here, I'm gonna have the bottom lap the top because of how it's constructed right here. And then we have to make sure we go ahead and do that on pieces up here. And you can see the stitching pop up. I'm going to make the cuff and the hem have it on both sides because it's like an edge piece, so there's usually a lot of puckering there. We'll put it on the corners. Let's see where else. We can do it around this top stitching too. I don't know if we really want that visual, but why not? Let's do it. Because there is a piece stitched under there, so we're trying to make this look as real as possible. Okay, I think I got most of the places. Oh, I forgot this little tab. Yeah. You can also use the seam segment puckering, so you don't have to be drawing each edge individually. That's fine. I'm just doing free because I use that more frequently. Around the collar, I'm going to do the same thing going all the way around. And the last one, I'm just going to do the front. All right. So even from here, if I turn on high quality rendering for a minute, hopefully it won't crash, you should be able to see a little bit more 3D texture coming through. Yep, we still have some work to do, but it's getting better. Let me save this as well. I will save this. Oh, come on, don't freeze on me. Okay. There we go. All right, I'll just save this here. All right, great. Now we're going to go ahead and add in our top stitching. I'm going to also be using free top stitching, but you can use segment top stitch. And we're going to start again at the shoulders and pretty much go over the same areas you would have done your puckering. One thing to note though, the default setting on this is not a top stitching that I particularly like, so we're going to change that. If you go into your library, you can go to trims and to top stitch. And if you go to this icon to be able to look at everything, you can pull out this double needle top stitch that has a cover stitch on the bottom. I think that'll be a really nice one. And then on the hem of, or like on the cuff or hem of a jacket, you usually have a single needle chain stitch. So I'm going to load both of those. And now if you want to change a stitch that you already attached, you can select all, Command A, or select each stitch you have. And in the top stitch property, you can click down to the 2 needle top stitch and it will change that over. Now, this is still kind of a wimpy top stitch. So I'm going to go into the property editor. All the way down at the bottom, you can change the distance of how far the stitches are from each other. So we can do 1/8 or we can do like 1/4. That's a bit more beefy. I'm going to go ahead and do 3/16. That is my choice. You can, once again, change everything about this. The stitch per inch for denim is usually closer to 8. So I'm going to make that closer to 8, and I'm going to increase the text weight to, let's say, 80. And you can start seeing that this is looking more like a stitch that you would have on a canvas jacket. You can make the thread shiny if you want to, because oftentimes there's like a poly-wrapped cotton thread done on jackets like these that have a bit of shine. So maybe we'll do that. You can also add a normal map and a displacement map and just add in a little bit of extra dimension. Down at the bottom, you can also turn on 3D. I haven't seen a ton of how that changes the renderings, but we're going to turn it on and see how we like it. The color, I'm going to change to a off-white so we can see it a little bit better. There's some issues with the rendering here. Okay, I just simulated and some of those issues went away. That's good. All right, so we're gonna just keep doing our top stitching. Again, just going over the spots you already added puckering to. I usually don't do these steps until the very end when I want to render because it takes a lot of processing power to keep this information. So you usually don't want to do this step until the very end. All right, oh, we should do the collar and this back panel. Yep. And I don't think I did the back sleeve. And then we're going to add for the cuff, but if we want it to be a different top stitch, if we want it to be that chain stitch, we would just click on it and click down to the top stitch. Now, the one thing is I didn't make any of the changes to the chain stitch that we did to the double needle stitch. So you can come in here and make all those same changes, or we make it more of like a cream. We're going to change it to a fabric shiny. We're going to do the text of 80 with an SPI of better. We can also do all of those. Let's see, add on 3D. We can add on a normal map and a displacement. And before this, we'll just do segment top stitch. Finish these off. There we go. Great. It looks like I missed I had done this, but looks like no. And this is back on the single needle stitching now. So if we want to change it to the double needle, you just click on these with the edit stitch tool and switch them over. So now I'm pretty happy with how this is starting to look. Let's just move around and take a peek here. I might want to add some top stitching on these little details because that really sends the rendering over the top. Oops. Segment. We're going to leave this open because it's supposed to be a fold, right? So there we go. And then just construction wise, I would probably make this 2 meter. Okay. So save as you go. Another thing that you should be looking at is your grain lines because it does make a big difference of how the fabric is rendered. So let's just take a peek at how our grain lines are laid out currently. To do that, you click in the edit texture tool. Like for example, cuffs are pretty much always on the on grain instead of cross grain. So why don't we rotate these around? Same with the tabs. Oops, that's not what I meant to do. A collar is always cross grain, and like yolks are almost always cross or bias. So let's do that. And then I think it'd be fun to do some cross grain on the front just so we can see kind of how that would look. All right. See, so you can see a texture difference. I think that'll be a nice little thing for us to look at. All right. So now in order for this to kind of pop a little bit more, one of the things that you can do is go into your stitching, your regular stitching, not your top stitching, and you can change the shrinkage of your stitch. So let's say we want to change, why don't we do a seam? That's easy to see. Let's do this back seam. You can click on these, and if you are in the edit sewing box tool, you can go to tension, click tension on, and if you hit simulate, doesn't do a ton right away. So you can edit with these tools. You can change the strength of your ease and the ratio of your ease. So let's say we take this down to 90 and make the strength 0.5. Let's see what that changes. You can see that it starts pulling it in a little bit more and giving some buckle to the fabric. I think that might be a little bit too much, but maybe not. Let's try it on a few other spots and see what we think. So again, you go to tension, we're going to do 0.5, and we're going to do And you can see that it starts creating more shape. It's trying to squish this into a 90% ratio. And that is what gives a garment a realistic look. When you wash a garment, it's washed the way that it's worn, it gives it texture. So I'm going to do that on the sleeves, pretty much all the seams. 0.5, 90. I might decide later that I want to undo that a little bit. It might be a bit too tight, but let's see. Yep, looking very lifelike. We'll do this inside. I think probably the hem and the cuffs will give it a good amount of visual. Yeah. Okay, so I think that 90% may have been a little bit too much because it's pulling it up quite a lot. So we can go back a little bit. I don't mind it on the sleeves, but on this back panel, let's try a little bit of a less intense ratio. Maybe we'll do 0.1 as the strength and see how that helps. Yeah, that's better. All right, we're gonna do this for a few more. We're gonna do, there's no top stitching here, but we're gonna do that the collar. Maybe for the rest of these, we'll just do 0.1 and 90. And some of the most important ones will probably be these in here. So let's see what we want to do. Turn on tension, 0.1, 90. Tension, 0.1, 90. Let's do 0.5 on this one. Yeah, you can definitely see it working. Alrighty, I think that's the majority of our seam lines. You can see that it gave a lot more dimension to the jacket. It looks like someone's actually wearing it. Yep, you can see this kind of natural rolling. The last little thing we're going to do that really pushes this over the edge is we're going to use this steam tool. So when we use this, it gives you a little icon where you can just brush over panels of your garment and it acts like steam would. It gives it some shrinkage and gives it some life around the body. So we're going to do some, it's good to do this around seams. So I'm just going to do some of these on the back panels, see how that goes. It does remove a little bit of the puckering, but it adds so much more like lifelikeness to it that it's a good thing to add in. So let's do some back here and just steam out some of the back. Just adds a lived-in character. Sometimes it might be a bit much and you have to undo, but for right now, it's pretty nice. Get some sleeves going. And you can see it actively moving as you're going. So if you decide you don't like something, you can edit it, undo it pretty easily. All right, let's do some on the collar. Forgot that bit. And you can change the size of your brush, how hard it is, and the amount of shrinkage you're doing. So you can also like add. Let's see what that does if we go on the back. Ooh, oh my gosh. Undo. Oh, interesting. The way this could be useful is if you change the shrinkage to be a positive number, you can make it look like a garment has bagged out after a lot of wear. So like if you go on these seams, it'll make it look like the garment's been worn in and has a little bit more life in it. So maybe we'll do that in a couple spots. Let's do that across here. And maybe that was a bit extreme. Yeah, let's undo that. I think 13% was too much. Usually in production, like 3% of like stretch and things is what's kind of normal. So let's do 3%. Do this. Still like the idea of bagging it out up here a little bit. There we go. Looks like a pretty lived-in garment. Let's see. Let me take some of this out of here. I think I made it drip too long. There we go. There we go. I think that's pretty good. So there's no button on the bottom here. I don't know why. I think I did that too much on the front. So let's undo that a little. Okay, I think this is good enough for now. So now we have all of our like seam lines, how we want them. We have all the seam lines, how we want them to look. Okay, go back. The undo button is your friend, but sometimes it's not. Oh, no. All right, we had an autosave file. I had to go back in and do some of this brush stroke again, but that's okay. All right, so we've got our thing almost ready. Let's see. Do we like that with a stretch or with a pull? I think that looks good. Okay, so now we have our garment looking good with our top stitches, our puckers, these defects that we're adding in. And now we're going to look at particle distance. So if we click on some of these smaller pieces, you can see they're already at 5. If we turn on our wireframe, you can see that this file was already made with the small pieces being small mesh. But what we want to do is put everything down to 5. It may crash my computer, so I'm going to save it first before I hit render. There we go. All right, save. Turn off our wireframe. And now we'll hit simulate. It will take a little while, but it should act much more like real fact. Turning it around. Yep, it's definitely got a lot of life in it, which is really nice. May have overdone it with the steaming on this spot right here, but let's see. Let's unsteam. Can't make up my mind on this. I want a little bit of the steam. I don't know why there isn't a button down here. I'm going to add it because that's annoying me. You just use this tool here, button tool, we're just going to go ahead and place. I'm not going to make it super precise. And then we're going to place over here as well. And then we're going to convert, let's see, this one to a buttonhole. Convert buttonhole. And then we'll go ahead and close this up so it fits with the rest of the garment. Now let's look at what buttons we have here. Before we go to the render window, I want to make sure that we have like a nice shank button in there that will look like it's metal in our rendering. And then maybe we'll look at playing color a little bit. All right, so let's select all. We'll look at all of our buttons and okay, it says a default button right now. Let's go into CLO library, trim, and let's go to, I think there's a shank. And then let's look at buttonholes. I want a nice jacket buttonhole. I like these ones. Looks like it was already in there. That's fine. So we're going to select all of our buttons and change it to the shank button. All right, and then we'll select our buttonholes and we'll change it to, well, it's already as a default buttonhole, so that's fine. All right, let's go into our shank button and we'll look at some of the properties here. We can change this to be a metal, which is what I want to do. And I'm going to change the color to be like a silver. So gray here, but in the render, it'll look like silver metal. And let's see, do we want to change the color of the fabric? Let's get to like a duck brown. That's too red, too orange. I feel like that's change our buttonhole. You can go into the default buttonhole that they all are, and we can change the thread color. This brown, let's say. No, I don't like this. Let's undo it. Let's change it to, okay, you can use your eyedropper to get the color of the fabric, and then you hit escape. And I usually like to make it a little bit darker so that it stands out. I'm going to add it to my swatch window so that I can reference it for the thread. And then I'm going to go into my top stitching and I'm going to change the color of my thread as well. We're going to use the same, I'm going to use this color. And we're going to do the same thing for the chain stitch. I don't think that worked. Apply and close. There we go. Sweet. Great. Yeah, the back of this arm looks really nice with the kind of detail that we put on there. Okay, cool. So I think we are set to start looking at our render. Let's start our interactive render. I'm going to remove the avatar so that we can just focus on the garment. If you updated something in your window and it's not showing, usually you just need to hit stop and then reload. And then it will show you. And you can rotate around in the 2D or 3D window to get a good view. Like, very happy with how this back arm turned out. I think that looks really nice. Like, that looks like it could be a real garment. This still looks like it could use some work on some of those extra little details, like I was saying. But for right now, let's just start working on getting some good lighting. We'll do a back view because I like the back view. All right, so for all of these, we can make our own custom lighting or we can use preset. Up until this moment, I've kind of been telling you just to use presets, which is fine. If we go into the image video properties, you can say if you want to save as an image, turntable, or animation, your views, your colorways, which we haven't gone into yet, how big you want your image to be, if you want a background color. So like we could make this a gray background so that it stands out really nicely. I actually think that looks nice. You can also change the texture of, or the vignette of how the lighting looks in the background. So like we can do a gradation in the back like that, or you know, whatever you want. You can also just make it a transparency. So it's just the garment that is getting rendered, not any background. In the second drop down, we have, if you want this to be a basically how you want to capture the image. I like using the physical camera properties. If you do this, you get to think about your image as a physical camera, where you get to think about ISO, your shutter speed, think about how you would take a picture with a regular camera. You can also do depth of field. And if you turn on focus by left click, you can focus on specific parts of the garment. So if you really want, like, if you wanted to zoom in and take a really up close shot of, let's say, this right here, you can focus by clicking on your image. Get this a little bit better framed. So let's say you want to focus right here. You left click and it focuses the camera on this spot, and everything else gets a bit washed out. Yeah, I think it makes more sense the closer you zoom in. So let's try doing that. Effects, we're not going to do. Focus distance. You can see this is a bit sharper than this back here. Next, we're going to go down to lighting. All of these are preset in here. What the default is what you're looking at in your 3D render window. But you can see all of these have a very different vibe. Different colors. You can try out a couple. We're also going to look at how you can make your own lighting setup in a little bit. Right now, I actually think this one looks really nice. Let's do this, light number 6. Okay, so I'm gonna leave everything like this as is for now. We'll come back and talk about lighting more later. We're gonna go into our render properties. I can't change my engine. There are now options to use different engines within your computer to render. The noise threshold, we want all the way down to 0.001, or else you get a really grainy image. So turn that all the way down. And then you're going to give it a max amount of time you want the computer to render. So I'm going to say 5 minutes. It's automatically set to 20, which is quite a lot. You can put up or down the seam puckering intensity. I'm going to put it up. And then you can also change the quality of your lighting and material. I'm just going to put it to high. And then everything else I've always left the same. So let's go ahead and do a render. I'm going to stop. And then when you're ready, you hit play. So it's going to update the scene if you changed anything. Mine will probably take a little while to render, so I'm going to pause and come back when it's done. All right, our render has been saved. Where did it save? Let's see. Jacket. Here we go. Look at that. It was definitely focused on this area. A lot of this I would go back in and redo because it looks too perfect still. And like here, the stitch obviously didn't like catch in the image. So we'd need to go back in and sew a little bit. But I mean, all things considered, that's a pretty good first attempt at doing something that's a bit more photorealistic. Let's turn this rendering back on. And we can look at how to do some lighting scenes ourselves. For this next part, I'm actually going to turn off our physical camera so that it will just load and do what we want it to. We're just going to try to take a photo of this. We're going to do some different lighting. Let's see, maybe we do a 3/4 view. Yeah, I'm not happy with these wonky bits right here. I'd probably want to go in and change them, but for right now, it's fine. Okay, so for lighting, one of the things you can do is look at this. If you click number 5 and look at it top down, it looks very much like a photography studio lighting setup. If we Google this, there's a lot of maps like this that will show you exactly how to set up your camera and your lighting to get the type of image you want. The most popular one is a 3-point light. 3-point lighting. So where you have a fill light and backlight. So it's going to give us something that looks kind of like this at the end. So what you can do is you can actually physically save this image and put it in your CLO window. Let me do that so I can just show you. I'll save it in class 5. That's fine. I'm going to turn off the render for right now. And let's see, how do we want to do this? I'm going to make a rectangle. And what I should do while this is waiting is turn our garment, freeze it and deactivate it so that it's not trying to render the garment while we're moving light around. Because I didn't do that, we have the spinning wheel. Okay, So why don't we do, which one do we want to do? Why don't we just freeze it for right now? All right, we're going to click on this and say move to center ground. There we go. So now if you click on 5, it is at the center. And we're going to make this different material. Let's just use our default. There we go. All right, so now we're going to find this image that I had just done. 3-point lighting, and we're going to drag it in here. Okay, we're going to go in with our texture, and we're going to make this bigger to fill the space. We're going to move it so that, oops, it's right in the middle. We can, of course, keep making it bigger if we want to, or smaller, whatever you want. I think this is good enough. That is what we were going for. All right. So now, if you go back into the render window, let's reload this. Here are the lights that we're going to be setting up. We can start with, we can do a spotlight or a rectangle light, sphere light, directional light. Let's try a directional light and see how we like that. I'm going to pull it out here, and you can see that there is this little line that shows what the light is pointing at. So I'm going to adjust it so that it points at our garment. I'm going to set these up first, and then I'll turn on the render so we can see what it looks like. But again, if I keep hitting 5, it will take me back to this front view, and I can adjust as we want. We can do the directional light, bring it out here, bring it up, rotate it around, rotate it around. And then you do have to move your window so that you can make sure that it's pointing at the right thing. So like right now, it is pointing at the ground. Go back to 5, make sure it's in the right spot. And we can decide if we want to change these to rectangle lights or spotlights or anything like that. But for right now, this is what we're going to use. Bring it up, rotate it around. We can decide how high we want all of it. Usually you do want some lighting on the face, so some of them will need to bring up pretty significantly, I think. Like usually key light, I believe, would be a bit more focused on the face. So, and let's turn on our rendering and see what we have. What I should do is turn off this map. So let's hide this. Hide 3D pattern. It still shows it in the render window. All right, so let's go to our lighting. It still has these from the lighting we had in here before. So what we're going to do is turn off that dome light and just look at the directional lights we put on. If you want to, you can turn them on one by one so you can take a look at where it's actually hitting. So like this one, oops, I'm holding the wrong one. This light, if we move it up and point it differently, it will have a different effect on what is being shown. So I'm going to point it kind of right at the center back. Now let's turn on this one. It's pretty bright, but I think we like that since this is the key light. And now we're going to turn on this fill light. And because it's fill light, we're going to turn down the intensity, maybe like half. Let's zoom in. Maybe a quarter. And just let's look at what happens if we mess with the intensity and the color. Like sometimes it's nice to get a bit more of like a yellow, that's kind of peach, a yellowy light to make it look like more natural lighting. Okay, so let's try this on a few of them and see how that changes things. I did not save the color I just chose. That makes it very yellow. Don't like that. We can, of course, experiment with turning on and off the different lights. I like kind of how this is going so far. I might turn this light down a little bit more, or maybe move this one a little bit further away because it's a little bit of a harsh light right now. Yeah. What you can do once you have your lighting set up in a way that you like, go ahead and hit save. And you can save it in your CLO assets as 3-point lighting. And then you can just keep experimenting with if you want the photo to be taken with a regular camera, with your depth of field on. If you want it to just be rendered as is, you can rotate it around and find a view you like where it looks the most natural. That white lighting in the back is a little harsh, so I might turn it down, but yep, from here you would just render out your next image. I'm going to go ahead and exit out of this for right now. You can turn on and off the lights by just clicking on them in the program and hitting hide light or deactivate light. Or if you want to get back in, you have to go to the render window, find them here. They're also in the environment display, so you can turn them on and off there. All right, so I had frozen this garment. Let's unfreeze it. So now, again, when we render, we're recognizing the garment again, so it'll get manipulated in the garment, and the computer will try to recognize it. Now, what we're going to do next is look at colorways. This is useful for when you're actually working in a job and you are trying to use this very functionally instead of trying to use it creatively like we have been. What I'm going to do is add a logo just so that we have another thing that we can add in colorway wise. I'm going to add this on the chest, and let's say it's 2 inches big, right on center front. Lovely. Okay, so there's a couple of things in here that we'll need to look at. All right, so we've got a logo. We have a lot of top stitching colorways. We have fabric colorways. We have buttons. Why don't we go into production colorway? So from here, you can see all of the information for this jacket in one spot. Up here, there's an add button, and there's an add as custom setting, and there's insert keyframe. Right now, we're just going to do, it's going to copy over all of the same information. So we're going to go into colorway 1, and if you click into it, just being slow, you can come in here and change the colorway. Let's make a blue version of this jacket. So here we go. We're going to change all of the colorways of everything we want to be this blue. I'm not sure what that gray is. The FIT logo, I haven't actually done recoloring in here, but I think if you hit desaturate, it will make it white. Yeah, I think we still have to, let me see. Okay, yeah, that doesn't work, unfortunately. I think you still have to recolor outside. It will recolor the inside image, but it won't recolor the whole thing. So I think that's worked on for the next update. So there's very minimal things you can do here, but if you have a different colorway already, you can just drag it in and it's fine. Let's change our shank buttons to be, and we'll change our buttonholes. Buttonholes are changed to blue. Oh, because we changed these base colors up here, it automatically changed our top stitching that's in there to blue as well, which is really awesome. All right, so you can do that for as many colorways as you want. Once you're done, you hit update and it will update the colorway visually. You can also change if you have a lot of styles or a lot of colorways, you can hide the edit function so you can just see all of your colorways. You can also save these images. Let's save it here and see what it saves as. Saves as a PNG. And then let's see, let me make sure this is just regularly saved. And we'll see what happens when we open the ZPRJ file. This is the file that I just saved. It's not linked to the PNG. Oh, interesting. So this did not save all of my colors, which is fine. Fabric, it just didn't save the color. Let's update. All right, cool. So now we're going to take this into closed set and see how we can use this with other partners that we'll be working with across the industry. What we're going to do is go to style.clo-set.com, and this is where you're going to be working for your own company. You're going to make your own group. So I'm going to upload a new file. I'm going to upload what we were just working on, the jacket, and it should upload with all of our colorways and everything already in here. I'll just add it to my workroom. It may take a little while to process, so I may have to pause and come back again. All right, yep, it's uploading. I'll pause and come back. All right, so my jacket's now ready. Let's double click on this in Clo Set. The really nice thing about this that Clo has worked really hard on is making these files shareable, easy to access for any of your teammates or anyone you may want to be working in these or looking at. It's great for working with clients. They don't have to have Clo in order to work on them. You can go back and forth between the colorways here, which is really nice. You can change your style name, and in here you can change if you are working with your own brand or another brand, you can change if you are adopting a style, etc. You can add in more info like who the customer is, material, price, MOQ, all of that info. You can also go in here and create an annotation. So for example, I can want to put an annotation here and do make sure to ask graphics about recoloring logo. Right? And so now that will be in the file as well. Complete. All right, so now that annotation lives there. Let's see, what else do we have in here? We have our colorways, we have our files. We don't have any extra links, but here you can share. A few other just cool things to show you are you can also view that with an avatar in here. You can explode the view, which is my personal favorite. You can explode the view and look around, so you can look inside. You can do a schematic render. So again, you can do your CADs in this so easily. The hotkeys are the same, so pressing 2 will get you to a front view. You can change the garment rendering style, add in your strain maps. There's a 3D tech pack being made right now. If you click this, try the new layout, it's going to take you to a new version of the Clo Set platform. So in Configurator, this is where you can see all of your graphics, all of your buttons, all of your button holes, and this is basically where you're going to make your tech pack. It's freezing for me. You can also add a colorway in here, which is really cool. So you can click on this fabric. You can come in here, click color. Let's make a pink one. Save. There you go. And now it's updated in there. And you can do that for everything again. You can change the shank button to a different color. I'm making this look pretty horrendous. It's my favorite. You can change all the top stitching, all the buttonholes. So like the wild thing about this is a PLM, a product line manager, or like someone from marketing can have an idea for a different colorway and they can do it in this website instead of having to download the program and learn how to use it, which is really awesome. Web Tech Pack. If you click on that, it will give you a ton of information. It'll show you all of the thumbnails. You can change it to schematic render. This is like insane. This was like 90% of my job in my first job outside of school. And this is just being done automatically. You can add as much information as you want. You can add fields. we have our bill of material already done for you. So for example, if it will tell you your consumption, it'll tell you how much that should take. I think we need to take a look at this marker though. Okay, yeah, I didn't create a marker. So let's do that first actually and see if it translates across. We're gonna go ahead and go into print layout. And to create a marker, I believe I've gone over this before, but actually let me delete this map because we don't need that. Let's go into print layout. And what you're going to do is go into settings here and you can tell the software how wide your fabric is. So let's see, in inches, it starts off automatically at 44, but let's say it's 60 inches wide. You can tell it if you want it to be laid out one way, two way, four way. So let's just go ahead and hit play and it will automatically nest it for you. So again, if we hit two way, let's hit play. 15% waste, that's pretty good. And since this is a canvas, and it probably doesn't matter too much if it's placed four-way, let's just see what it says. 16% waste, that's so interesting. All right, let's go back to two-way. So I'm gonna save this now. I don't know if this is going to automatically update or if we're gonna have to re-upload the file because it should be telling us how much yardage is actually being used. We can also go in here and edit it ourselves. So let's say we were stuck to a 44-inch width. So it's not letting me make a nest because this piece I rotated on the wrong grain and it's too wide for the fabric. So I rotated it and it should nest just fine. There we go. All right, so if this was a 44-inch wide piece of fabric, you can see that it uses 1.68 yards. 1.68 yard. 1.68. There you go. So if you know information, you can add it in there. I have to figure out how to update this, but we'll do that another time. Anyway, so this has all the information. You can hit add if you want to add in anything else. You can add as many instructions and call out pages as you want here. This will show you all of the pattern pieces. Or this is showing you all the fabric, I'm sorry. So this is all body fabric. If you had multiple fabrics, it would show here. Here's our cutter's must with the individual individual pattern pieces themselves. Here's our graphic placement, etc., etc. Measurements, I didn't actually create a point of measure. That's something we can do later. But then here it'll give you an estimation of the total cost of what it'll take to make you, which is pretty cool. Interestingly, the trim is costing a ton. Why is it costing a ton? The shank buttons themselves cost $15. Buttonholes seemingly take a lot of cost. That seems a bit high. Anyway, so all of this is available to you basically already as part of the software. So if you hit download, you can download it as a PDF or an Excel. Let's just download both colorways and see what happens. I guess we'll come back for this too. Oh, nope, here we go. So now I've opened and look at our tech pack that was automatically made. I didn't put in any notes on the construction pages and they are quite warped, but this is super, super cool. All right, versions. I'm gonna upload a Z-pack, this one where we changed the nesting plan. Let's see if it got it to work. All right, so this new version has been uploaded from CLO. We're going to go back into the try new layout. And we're going to go to this web tech pack. New content version has been updated. Let's update it. See if our bill of materials was updated accurately. All right, yeah, there you go. It updated it. You can see the yield, the nesting layout that we had for our 44-inch. Oh no, this is still the image from the 60-inch. All right, there's a little bit of working out to do still there. But the point is, things will update when you update them. In CLO, you can update a version to CLO set. I think that's all we're going to do today. We'll come back around for more info on some of the other things we had talked about discussing. Thanks.